everyone, and welcome to our latest soldering tutorial, and thanks for tuning in. Yeah, as you can see, we're going to sort of cover trace damage in this video. I've got two different thicknesses of traces. I've got two slightly thicker traces up here, and two very sort of skinny traces sort of curled up in the air up the top of your screen. I use two different wires for the thicknesses. So for the thicker ones, I use sort of Kynar wire, which is a 30 gauge sleeve single core wire. It's a great PCB sort of modification and repair wire, very common. And yeah, up here I'm going to use sort of a very fine copper wire that's enamel coated, and that's to do these two thinner traces up the top end. So when I do my sort of trace repairs, I always try and match the width of the trace with the wire that I'm fitting, just so your signals sort of run down it properly. And I'll always start with the cleanup operation on sort of when I'm doing something like this, just to get rid of all the loose bits. And then you can see where you've got to go. So like I say, I'll sort of show you how to glue them all down at the end. I've got a good method for the gluing, and the end results, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised of how something like this can turn into something, yeah, quite pretty. So what we do, move on to the cleanup, and yeah, I'll show you how to do that. Right, so after assessing the damage, I'm just going to start removing these loose bits that are the flapping in the air. So basically what I can do with this first part, just basically pull the tracks off that you can see sort of curled up in the air. I'll just start with that one. That should just peel off. Be careful. Just grab it with your tweezy, just peel that along, and that bit should peel off. Take a little couple of goes. So that's just pulled that bit off. You can just basically, what I do then with the second part of that, just get to a bit of solid ground. All you need to do is put a little score. Get to solid ground, just a little score. Don't go too deep, about halfway through the trace. Now I can peel that bit back and it should break at the sort of cut I've just given it. So what I can do now, just grab that bit, just wiggle it, and it should break at that little sort of cut I've just done. Just give it a little wiggle, just lift that bit up there, just to get that last little bit off. Just get my scalpel blade under it. It's always good to get to solid ground with this, so when you fit the new wire, you've got no danger of it going beyond that. So just get a nice bit of solid ground. So I'm going to leave that there now. That's, you've got a solid sort of trace going down there, so that's sort of yeah, I'm happy with that. And what I can do now is move on to the next part that's similar. So again, just do a nice little sort of little score across the trace. This means when you sort of peel it up or break it back at that point, it won't go beyond it and take the rest of the trace with it. So you don't want to go right through. If you do go right through, it's not a problem. Again, just peel it up and hopefully I can get it. Yep, there you go. That's done that one really nice. So I've got a nice solid point of trace there and there. That bit's okay. That's still flat, so I'm just going to leave that. I'll sort of scrape that back sort of soon, and that's where we join the new wire. Then I'm going to go to the next one. So just turn the board round. I'm going to do this sort of. Do the thinner trace just above that now. Just centralise it in your screen. So again, get to a solid piece of ground, or solid piece of trace just there. Again, you don't want to go too deep in case you've got layers below. Be careful not to go, you know, not too much pressure, otherwise you could go straight through and hit the lower layers. Again, just carefully pull that up. And that's broken that right at that point where I've sort of scored it. So that's that one sorted. So again, I'm going to go to the one at the top and get that one done. Just turn it around a bit more, just get it back in focus. So again, just go just beyond where it started to curl up. Slight score through. This means when you pull it up, you'll never go beyond that point. That's what you're looking for. Let's just pull that one up. It should break at that point. There you go, that's got that one. So you've got a nice solid piece of trace there. As you can see, it's already starting to look a lot more respectable when you've got sort of some solid points to solder to when we put the wires on. I'm just going to do this last piece up the end here. That's this one up here. Just going to clean this part up. What we do now, just get that back in focus for you. Hopefully I can just try and get this tidied up. It's slightly difficult for me to do this because of the angles I'm trying to work at, sort of to get the video right. So don't matter if you've got a little piece there, that's not a problem. That's still solid. This bit's solid. And that's just tidied up that end for a nice, nice new wire. So as you can see, I've got some nice solid points now. I'll just get it back in focus. That's it. Sorry about that. Yeah, clean this last part up here. Just take a little piece off there. Just lift that slight loose bit up there. So I'm happy with all that. You've got some nice solid copper there. So that's basically the tidying up the loose ends that were floating around at the start. So as you can see, it's already sort of, you can see where you're going now, and that's the aim of this part, just to clean up all the loose bits. You've got some solid sort of traces to work on, and that's what you're looking for this stage. What I do now, we move on now. We'll basically sort of scrape back the traces to give some sort of soldering points. And yeah, I'll move on to that part now. Right, so after the stage where we removed all the loose pieces of trace, we're just going to come back now, and we're just going to start scraping away some of the trace at each end, just to give it a soldering point. I'll scrape them back about 1 millimetre or 2. Just gently, don't go through obviously don't go too deep. Just get the resist off, and you can just basically tin these afterwards. And you get a good point to sort of fix the wire to when you come to do that. So I'll do these two first. Just try and keep a nice uniform line, and then you get a nice joint afterwards. So I'll do these two. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly clean the sort of dust off of them two, all the sort of excess resist that's just come off. Basically all you need then is a little bit of flux, and I'll get these tinned up. So let's put a little bit of flux on them too, and we'll get them tinned up. And then this gives you a good soldering point when you come to attach your wires. So just get a bit on there, a little bit on there. So when we come to attach the wires, you've got a nice, nice sort of solder point to go to. Just going to get them a little bit sort of lower. You can always, if you get too much on this at this stage, you can always wick that off. So a little bit of flux should, that's it. Right, so I've got them nice and low now. So let's clean that off, just with a little bit of ultra sol cleaning fluid that I use. But there's lots of cleaning fluids on the market, so I'll show you what these two look like. So they're now cleaned up, sort of scraped back and tinned. So you've got a nice reference point when you come to put your wires on. Just going to blow the sort of focus, sort of vision up slightly. So you can see I've got a nice point on there to solder to. So that's what you're looking for. So what I'm going to do, I'll just do one of the small traces just to sort of show the point again. Just do the one above it. I'll just sort of put the focus up a little bit, or the image up. Just do the one slightly above that. So yeah, it's basically any thickness of trace. Always do it the same way. Just scrape back. Once you've got solid traces to go to, just scrape back about 1 millimetre or 2. Tin them up, sort of clean it up, and then you're at a really good stage to sort of reattach your new wires. So again, just put a little bit of flux on that one. And just get that one tinned up. What I'll do after this one, I'll sort of move on to the next stage. I'll get all them up to that same point, and and then we'll move on to the next stage. Just put a little bit on there. That's it. Just clean that one up. Like I say, I'll get them all to this stage, and then we'll move on to the point where we're going to put the wires on. So as you can see, I've got 3 nice joints, all of them. So that's what you're looking for. So yeah, just basically look for that sort of 1 or 2 millimeters back on all these three, and try and aim for that on all of them, and yeah, and you'll have some good points to get your wires attached to. So what I'll do, I'll get them all up to that stage, then we move on to the sort of fitting of the. Just quickly before we go sort of come to fitting the wires, I just want to show you where we're quickly at. So I've carried on sort of scraping the traces back in 8 positions. I've tinned them all up so they're ready sort of for the new wires. So as you can see, that's the point you want to get to at this stage. So yeah, basically I'm going to start with the 2 thinner traces up the top. I'm going to do these with a sort of enamel coated copper wire, quite a thin one. And then yeah, I'll move on to these 2 down the bottom. I'm going to do with kynar. So yeah, like I said sort of earlier in the video, it's quite important that you sort of match the thickness of the trace with a new wire. So what I'll do, I'll start with the 2 sort of narrow ones up the top, and yeah, show you how to fit with them. And then afterward, sort of fitting them all, I'll sort of show you how to bond them down. So yeah, we're moving to that stage. Right, so come on to fitting the first 2 traces. These are the 2 narrower ones I'm going to do up the top. I'm actually using a 0.2mm copper sort of wire that's enamel coated. And there's 2 ways you can get the sort of enamel off these. You can either burn the enamel off, which is what most people would do. And be honest, that's probably what I do quite a lot. But for this case, you can actually scalpel blade the coating off if you're really careful, just by twisting the wire as you go. Just got to be really careful about the pressure so you don't sort of score the inner copper. So what I tend to do, I've already prepared this wire. That's going to go from that point to that point there, and that's exactly the same width as the trace, which again is quite important. And what I've done here, I've sort of prepared that end to suit that joint. I've got a sort of flying lead coming out here that's way too long, so I'm quickly going to bend that into shape. You can actually sort of hold this if you're gentle with your tweezers without damaging the wire. So that's what I just quickly do. So I think it's important if you can follow the sort of indent of the board, so it's the ingrained sort of trace where it used to be. I'll just move that one out of the way. You can actually sort of get the perfect sort of shape to suit where it used to go. So that's what I like to do, just go beyond there. I can just ease that back. I should get the same sort of shape as what used to be there. So that's what I've done there. So I've got the same shape as it used to be there. So I'm just going to turn that back round. Try and keep it into focus. So as you can see, I've got a nice bend, the sort of position where it used to go. And then what I can do now, with my scalpel blade, I gently just put it on the top, allowing for the sort of millimetre you need to scrape back. Just hold it slightly up in the air. It should be about there. You can gently just wiggle this bit, and that will give you the perfect sort of length for what you need. Just gently wiggle it, and you go through it in the end, and you've got a nice, that's the desired wire length, what you're looking for, and that will suit what used to be there. So say on that end, job to keep this into focus, I've actually tinned the first end properly, that one down there, so that's pre-tinned, so that's going to suit that pad, and I've bent the wire into shape, and then we can get on with the soldering of it. So that's how I do my wires. So yeah, basically prepare the length, get them tinned if you need to, and yeah, you should be good to go. So what we do now, to get my soldering iron ready, I'll sort of show you how to solder. Right, so as you can see, I've basically sort of bent the wire in position. I'm holding it down with Captain tape. That's a tape that's widely available from RS Components, Farnell, or in America, so Mauser or DigiKey. So yeah, it's a good tape. It's proper PCB tape, so it's good for sort of holding wires down if you need to. So I've actually sort of pre-tinned this end, the same as that end up there. So basically the wire is perfectly in shape now, so you can get on with the soldering. Basically I always like to add a little bit of flux to this. So yeah, just put a little bit over the joint, and yeah, just basically start soldering away. Just need a tiny bit on the end of your iron. Because I've already sort of tinned these, it should go really easy. Hopefully I can keep it in focus. So there you go, I've got a nice joint round there. I'll blow these. I'll blow the sort of joints up at the end, not literally, but yeah, I'll get the vision clearer and bigger so you can sort of see the joints nicely. So on this end, I've literally done the same. I've got a loose end up here, as you can see. So I've basically pre-tinned that exactly the same as the other end. And again, I can just put a little bit of flux on. The flux is quite important because it obviously aids the soldering process. So yeah, just a little bit of flux on there, and then basically repeat the process. Just get a little bit of flux over there. That's it. All you need now is sort of small amount of solder, and yeah, do the second joint. Then we can get sort of tape removed, and yeah, hopefully see what it looks like. So just add a little bit on there. Just be quite quick. That's it. So I've got a nice little joint. It's rock solid now. Yeah, it's a rock solid joint, and that's what basically there's two nice joints. Job to see it because this wire is literally 0.1 or 0.2 millimeter, so it's a job to sort of see the joints. I'll try and try and zoom in a bit if I can. Hopefully, it's pretty difficult to see this because yes, this wire is so small. But yeah, I've got a decent joint sort of up this end. So just going on to the wire. If you need to scrape the wire resist back, it's not a problem, as long as you don't go down into the barrel. So yeah, that's how I fit my wires. So what I'll do, I'll repeat the operation for the other one, and yeah, we'll then go on to the Kino wires to do the other two traces. So what I could do now is I'll gently peel the Captain tape off, sort of clean the joints. Like I say, we move on to the other wire, and then I'll show you how to bond them all down. Moving on to the wider two traces, I'm going to use a Kino wire for this. Basically, if I've got a short length, which one of these repairs is, I'd always prepare it again on the wire. And you can actually sort of get any length you want on this, so you can sort of strip that length. You do slightly longer or slightly longer. I'd do this sort of up to about 1 inch. This sort of this method. So yeah, if I've got a real long sort of wire to repair, I'd sort of solder it to the board and then sort of go along, and yeah, when I get to the other end, holding my fingers, you'd be fine with that. But if you're doing a short length, always sort of, well, I never ever solder one end to the board and then sort of strip it while it's floating in the air, because basically you're in danger of pulling the pad off. So this is the best way. Prepare your wire, and this is the way I'm going to do for the first sort of repair of these next two traces. I'll have the wire prepared, ready to solder on, and this is the method I would use. So we move on. Right, so come on to the first of the two trace repairs. You can see in the middle of your screen, these were the two wider sort of repairs I have to do. Yeah, so what I've done, I've prepared my wire as in the previous little video. I've got the sort of short length that I require, so I just solder that in position. And basically what I do now, I'll try and turn this around slightly so you can hopefully get a better view. It's quite difficult to keep this all in focus. I'll just sort of zoom in slightly. So keep it there, you should get a good idea. Yeah, so what I'm doing now, I'm just scalpel blading the wire again, really carefully, as in sort of how I did the other two traces. So just gently sort of push it on the top and sort of tweak the end. Eventually you'll break through without damaging sort of the wire underneath. Be really gentle. Eventually you'll get through there. So what I can do now, I'll just tweak that wire and I can solder that up. Just tweak it down slightly. Right, now I can solder that end up. Just try and zoom in slightly. Please bear with me, I'm just going to zoom in slightly. Just turn it round. So hopefully you can get a sort of view of what's going on. So I'm going to add slight, sort of small amount of flux. Don't want too much on here, so I don't want it to run everywhere. If it does, not a problem, I'll clean it all off after. So I've got a small amount of flux added on. Try and get the vision clearer. And basically I can just solder that end up. Just got to be really quick on this end because it's quite a short wire. You don't want the sort of the other end melting and the wire falling away. So just be really quick. And that's got that soldered up, as you can see. So yeah, I've got two nice joints. So I've got a nice sort of joint there. and going up to the other end I've got a nice joint there, and that's basically how I do my short lengths. Just go. So yeah, as you can see I've got a nice sort of wire between the 2 points, and that's how I do the short length. So pre-prepare your wire, and yeah, you should be alright. So what I do now, I move on to the larger, longer trace, and we'll show you how to do that. Right, so we move on to the final trace of these repairs. That's the longer one. Now I've actually done a couple of sort of preparation bits for this trace. The best way to do it, if you've got a certain sort of pattern to follow, basically this is a piece of solder I've sort of bent into the position of the existing trace that was there by following the indentation in the board, and as you can see I've got the same pattern as what was there before. All I do, basically I take this solder off, and I'll then straighten it out and measure it against a bit of wire, and just basically cut the wire to the same length as this, and then you've basically got the sort of prepared wire, the exact length of this piece of solder, and you know it's going to sort of fit the gap. So basically in there all I do is strip both ends off the board, then bend it into shape, and yeah, fit it to the board exactly like this. So this is a great method for sort of getting your sort of exact length of wire. And yeah, this is what I like to do. So like I say, bend it into this shape, take the solder off because it's nice and flexible, straighten it up, and then just prepare your wire against the length of this solder. So that's what I've done. I've prepared the length already just to sort of speed the video up. And what I do, I'll sort of move on to that. I'll lay it into place and tape it down, then I'll sort of show you the soldering of that. So I'll move on. Right, so as you can see, I've prepared the wire, like I was just saying a minute ago, exactly the same shape as the solder. So it matches the pattern of the trace going from the, you know, where it was missing. So yeah, what I've done, I've just sort of held it down with Captain tape, but yeah, if you've got any sort of electrical tape, that will probably do the job. So yeah, I've literally prepared the wire, stripped both ends to the right length. Basically I matched it up against that sort of straightened piece of solder to get this exact shape. So yeah, basically all we do now, just got to solder it up, and yeah, and that's it really. So I'll just add a little bit of solder to each pin, and or to each end of the wire, and yeah, that'll be it. So a bit to that one, just add a little bit more to this one, just take a little bit off that one. That's it basically. So I've got two nice joints, as you can see. I'll just zoom in slightly so you can sort of get a better view of the joints. So yeah, I've got a nice sort of one at the top there, nicely joined up here, and yeah, down the bottom got a nicely joined sort of yeah, one down there. So there you go. So I've got two nice joints either end of the sort of new sort of wire forming the missing trace. And basically that's exactly how I get the sort of nice pattern that was missing there originally. So yeah, so any length, like I say, sort of do it that method and you should be alright. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to basically clean all this up, and then I'll sort of show you quickly how I sort of bond them down. I use a glue called Tack Pack. It's a proper electrical sort of glue for PCBs. But yeah, there's a few different glues you can use. But yeah, I'll show you. Finally come on to the last stage. This is where I'm going to put a few sort of selective spots of glue just over the wire in certain places. And yeah, I've already put an applicator on the board. This is a 2-part glue I've got. So basically, yeah, it's pretty simple. Just put an applicator. I actually just apply it, sort of a little piece of solder. And just dab it over the top, and that should set. I'm just going to go along it and put a few, yeah, 3 or 4 spots along it. Don't need too many, just in certain places. So if I just put one sort of across there, that'll do both of them wires. So you don't need too much of this. The wires are fairly solid as long as they don't get knocked. This just gives it an added sort of benefit. So there's a fair few wires you can use for these, sticking your wires down. So it depends what one you get, is sort of how you apply it. So I like to just sort of put it on with a sort of piece of solder. You can get a nice, yeah, nice sort of little spot over the wire. It's quite a good method. You don't get too much on that way. So you don't want loads on. Just put one more. Yeah, just put one more across the short wire there. So yeah, I think I've got probably enough on there. Don't need too much. So what I do, just got to wait for that to set. Shouldn't take too long. So I've got, yeah, there's about 3 or 4 sort of spots around the sort of certain areas of the wires. So I'm going to let them set, and then yeah, basically I'll sort of take a few photos and yeah, and sort of show you the end results. So hopefully, yeah, you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully you've learnt something, and yeah, it's been of use to you. So anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in. Hopefully, yeah, like I say, you've learnt something, and I'll see you again soon with sort of more soldering tutorials. So until then, thanks a lot, and yeah, good luck with all your projects.